Arfield, what a bully! Scott Arfield! He's been threatening that recently, and all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. Here's Rory now. On the outside, decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Obviously quickly finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell. Saved by the keeper.
Burnley won it to the end. That is magnificent. They deserve that.
Only by Fulton Teller. Off for a hat-trick.
He's got it. Hat-trick for Nathan Teller. Oh, he's on fire at the minute. 3-0 Burnley. It's Nathan Teller's day. And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby.
Here's Benson. Can he go on the outside? Comes inside.
Top shot. Oh, the goal. Manuel Benson once more. That is top class. Burnley have done it. Fantastic. Clarets deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome along to the latest instalment of the TurfCast podcast, full-time show with me, Joe Redmond, after what was a dismal defeat down at the Den against a team that I see as incredibly average, and I don't mean any disrespect to Millwall whatsoever. They've clearly, turned their results around recently, but we'll see how good they are against supposed top teams in this league on Thursday or Wednesday, whenever it is, when they play Leeds. And I bet you Leeds don't put in a performance like that. But that was abysmal. As you can see, I'm joined by Andrew. I'm joined by Dan. And I'm also delighted to say that I'm joined by Sam as he's putting his hoodie on.
Sorry, lads.
He's had a busy evening, but he's here. So it's good to see Sam. How are we all doing, lads?
Yeah, all right.
Not bad, mate. Not bad.
I mean, it's only football, isn't it? So
Here he is. Yeah. I mean, you'd think the Queen had died again with some of the comments that have been going on, but let's be fair, it was absolutely atrocious today. And yeah, it's good to see some of the usual names in the chat. Stephen Lomas says, evening, all evening, mate. Murphy Brown says, Scott Parker has been embarrassed loads of times. He's got experience. I mean, say hello first, please, at least, mate. We'll get into all of that. We've had loads of comments before we even started, to be fair, so I'm not going to go through them all. John Payne's not happy. He says Parker out. Eddie Mitchell says, I have to concede. Parker is not the man for the job. I mean, we'll get into all that in a bit. Parker out starts now, says Murphy Brown. Nom G Darko. Neil Harris said we ran out of ideas pretty quickly and he didn't think we would score. He was bang on. If he could see how come our manager couldn't. I think our manager did allude to the fact he didn't look like we were going to score, to be fair. And I think he has said a lot, that we don't look like we, good enough going forward. Scott O'Sullivan says, evening all, let the inquest begin. To keep your comments coming in. GST says, evening all, this might get spicy. Graham Catlaw says, hi guys. Hi Graham, mate. Good to meet you the other day at the fan zone, by the way, Graham. Good to see you. Hi chaps, says Simon Woodhouse. You're more fuzz, says Flyover Friend. Not sure about that one, mate. Dale Husband says, evening lads. Can't be asked to listen about Burnley. Only here for you lads. Well, thank you. Thank you. Hannibal Medry fan clubs. Is Lauren much better than Hannibal? Okay, that's not really a debate I want to have right now, mate. The inquest starts about how shit the performance was, not on any individuals. Just give my tuppence first. Everybody get your comments in about the match. Try not to go too hard in on the Parker debate. Not because I don't want to have that debate, because we're going to have it later. But judging by some of the tweets that some lads in the room have put out today, I think there will be some people wanting Parker out, to be fair. But in terms of the actual performance, worst performance of the season so far, quite easily, in my opinion. Some people have been saying, well, it's not the worst. It's just the same it has been every single week. I'm like, no, let's look at each game on its credits individually. That was much worse than QPR. Yes, we have struggled going forward in pretty much every game this season since the first two. But Today was worse. At least in some of the other games, we've had like small patterns of play. We've just been a little bit toothless when it comes to it. Like, today there was nothing. There was no patterns of play. There was no identity other than just being shit. There was no creativity, which again we've seen, but it was just like against QPR. Okay, it was QPR and they sat back, but against QPR we got into good areas quite regularly, but then we just didn't do anything with it. Today we got into a good area once in the first 5 minutes with Luca Coley-Orshaw, who again should have done better with that, but still it wasn't good enough. Playing against an average Millwall team, in my opinion, it wasn't good enough. And it was easily the worst performance of the season so far. And we'll get into the Parker debate in a bit, but it's obviously caused a big, massive outrage on Twitter, on Facebook, and everybody is fuming. We'll go in order of the screen. Andrew, your thoughts on today's game, please, mate. I have seen your fan reaction, Andrew, and I have uploaded it. I just haven't made it public yet. I thought I'll do it after this so you can give your thoughts on here.
Yeah, it's all right, mate. Yeah, it was just dire, weren't it? I think after the match, I was sat there thinking it weren't that bad. It were awful, but it weren't that bad. It weren't, and the longer I've sat on it, the more I've gone back and watched the highlights, and I don't know why I've done it to myself, because the more I've done it, the more I'm coming round to your thing of, that was the worst match this season. And it were just like when I were doing my fan reaction, I was trying to pull out bits in my head like, oh, this was actually all right, though. This was actually all right, though. And apart from Coley-Orshaw at the start, a Tonji chance very early on, and after we've made the subs, it just looked shite. And it's not good. We just seem to be getting worse every week.
To be fair, I think you make a point. What I forgot to mention is the first 25, 30 minutes before Millwall really got a hold of the game, to be fair, we looked okay. I remember after the first 35 minutes, I think Sam and Chris were in the WhatsApp group. It might be you, Andrew, actually, sort of like saying like, this is poor and stuff. And I remember I did say at the time, like, we actually have been the better side so far. And I stand by that. I think at that point we had been, but then, the last 10 minutes of the first half was when Millwall started getting into it, weren't it? And then they get the goal. And then as soon as they scored, I'm like, unless something changes now drastically, we are not going to score. And we didn't create a chance after that. I don't think we had a shot on target after that. It was pretty awful, other than the first 25, 30 minutes. But as soon as Millwall turned the pressure up and actually stepped onto us, we didn't have a clue what to do. Sam, your thoughts on the game, please, mate?
I mean, it didn't feel like much of a contest, really, in my opinion. I think as soon as they settled into the game, they were easily the better team. Even in the first half, you could see the pattern of play that they had. Like, they came with a clear game plan, which a lot of teams are going to use against us this season. And so far, every single team's got our number. Like, they can manage to get, they limit us to very little chance, very little chances in the game. I've sat here with you guys and with everybody else, all my Leeds fan friends down here as well, like that. Us and them have easily the best squads in the Championship right now. What on earth is ours doing? We've got Coley-Orshaw, who's arguably the best winger in the entire league, who he's just beating his man, and then the delivery's not there, or there's no shot. Like, you've got Jadon Anthony, who doesn't look like he can get past his man. You've got no outlet up front. I don't know what people were talking about with Atunji as well. Like, I don't think Atunji played bad. I don't think he was, a fundamental part as to why we didn't win. But we did play like we didn't have a striker again. Other than the first 10, 15 minutes where he was getting the ball, we didn't have an outlet up front. But then again, there's nothing going to him. So I think the thing that's annoying me most at the moment is we've got no idea going forward. We've got no attacking identity. We look like a team of players that are just getting thrown out every week and being told, oh, listen, stick to your position, do this, do that. None of them really do anything. Like, defensively we look okay. We're conceding the odd goal here and there, and unfortunately we've been on the wrong end of of a result today. But I just don't know where goals are coming from, mate. Like, we don't have a striker. We don't have a 20-goal a season striker at all. We don't have wingers that seemingly look like they're interested in the game. I mean, like I say, Koleosho is one of the most exciting wingers in the entire league. But recently, what else has he done other than the goal against Leeds?
He's done nothing this season apart from that.
I mean, and I'm not even, because the thing is, I think he's an absolutely brilliant player. And again, to caveat that point, I also think at some point we will click as a team and it will start to get better. We have to, go back to the summer and remember that, the entire full core of the team got pulled away, and we can, Parker unfortunately had the rug pulled out from underneath him, and he's had to make do with what he's got so far. However, again, in saying that, in our last 6 games, we have played so many teams that are down there and so many teams that are average. I mean, I know, in fairness to Millwall, are they like 7th now, something like that?
Today's put them 7th, I think, yeah. Above Blackburn, so
they're not playing too badly, but I wouldn't say that they're like a team that like worries me for the playoffs, But what else can you say, mate? Honestly, like, we've come away from these last few games, and as fans, we've watched this team score 2 goals in 6 games. Like, we barely bark at people, let alone bite them. Like, it's just poor at the minute, mate. But you've got to give Parker time, because we gave Company time and we had results like this, and we're still in a better position than when we were with Company anyway. So I don't know. But it's the style of football, really, isn't it? It's not looking. It doesn't grip you. You don't feel like you're watching a game and thinking, "Wow, well, look at this Burnley team." You kind of watch them, and you think, "Jesus, we're going to trip over the line if we're going to do anything."
Yeah, I think that's the thing that frustrates people more. It's not necessarily the results, because results. There's been some bad results, but they've not been horrendous. Like you've just said, then we are 4th in the table. It's not like we're 18th. But I feel like some fans are reacting like we're 18th. However, it's the style of football I think is pissing people off the most. Like, I think I've said on a stream before, like, I'm not overly, if we're winning games, I'm not overly bothered on the style of play. But we're not winning games at the minute, and that's when Dyche finally got his marching orders as well. When we were playing in a tedious way, although the Dyche way is probably not as bad as this. But then the results stopped coming. Like, I didn't mind playing in a Dyche way and stuff when we were finishing 7th and 10th and stuff like that, and going to Old Trafford and winning games and stuff. But then ultimately, Dyche got his marching orders because we were still playing dreadful football and we weren't getting results. And I think the results haven't been horrendous, and that's why there's not more pressure on him. But obviously on Parker, but obviously the pressure has been ramped up a little bit today. But again, Dan, I'll come to you next. Obviously, Parker debate later. Your thoughts on today's game, please, mate.
God, I don't even know where to begin. What I will say is I had a family friend tell me that on Saturday night he went out on the piss and was expecting a really bad hangover in the morning. He said that he felt fine in the morning, but as soon as he started watching Burnley, his hangover came back, and I think that perfectly describes today's game. It's been absolutely atrocious. I know you're going to mention it later, but I am very much on the section of Scott Parker out, but we'll go on to that later, and I think that's going to be... It's going to be hard for me to change my mind on that now. I really hate to see how some of our players are playing, especially Josh Cullen. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know why he plays so negatively. I don't know why he struggles so much to build momentum, and I do think that's down to Scott Parker. Same with players like Koleosho. To go to Millwall and to barely get a shot in is I just can't fathom it, to be honest. I think I saw that someone say that we have, if you're just looking at the past 5 games, we have the worst XG out of the entire EFL. And obviously, I've not fact-checked that myself, but if that is true, that is a very worrying sign. And look, defensively, we have been good, but we're coming up against teams where, this is the bottom half of the table. The results are starting to come in. But if we look in 6 months' time, if we carry on this method, we're not going to be anywhere near playoffs. We're very lucky that the teams that we're facing at the minute on the top half quality, and that's no disrespect to any other team, of course. And I just think a lot of people compare Company's first 10 games to Scott Parker's first 10 games, and they compare it as Scott Parker's got more points and this and that, which is true. But I think A, Scott Parker's come up against easier teams, and B, when you compare Company's first 10 games to Scott Parker's first 10 games, you could see something building in Company's team. You could see some momentum. You could see it coming together. I don't see it coming together in Scott Parker's team. I really don't. If anything, I think it's getting worse, and I definitely saw it today. I think he's got too much bias over certain players, and I really think he sucks the individuality of certain players as well. And I think if we stick with Scott Parker, it's a lose-lose situation. And if I was the board, I would heavily consider looking into a new manager. But like I said, you are going to mention that later. As the game as a whole, I think it's atrocious.
We might as well get onto it now, to be fair. We might as well get onto it now. Obviously, you've gone into it into a little bit of depth there. So obviously, you're nailing your colours to the mast of Scott Parker out. And
yeah,
I agree. I think the bit of saying we played worse teams this time is a little bit harsh. Because, we drew against Blackpool last time, conceded 3 against Blackpool. The were poor against Stoke at home as well. At the time, I thought Luton were pretty poor, but also they ended up coming up with us. So I can't really use that as a thing. But I think the only point that I would agree with on the company sort of like Parker debate, what you just made there, is you could see something building on the company. You could see a plan. I can't see a plan at the minute, and that is the problem. I have given him the benefit of doubt, and I will still continue to give him the benefit of doubt. It's 13 games for me. It's far too early to be getting rid of a manager, especially when the core of the team was solved from underneath. And a lot of people forget about that as well. And we've got a lot of injuries as well. Let's not forget that. I know some of them are long term, and we knew about them already. But I think the point of we could see something building with company is a fair enough point. But for me, it's too early. I just think I'll let you give your reasons, mate. Go on.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying, but I just think, first of all, in terms of injuries, who comes back and saves the situation we're in? I don't think there's many players that come back from the injuries and will fit in straight away and completely solve our problems, and that's one big issue. And secondly, I think with Scott Parker, I don't think we owe him anything to keep him. And I think we are genuinely in a lose-lose situation, because if it's a case of we don't get automatics or don't even get playoffs and we don't go up, we've lost. Our aim as a club should be getting promoted, and that's what our board's thinking, and that's what us as fans should be thinking. And if we do go up, let's be honest, we're probably going to go straight back down with Scott Parker, because he's clearly not the man to run us in the Premier League if we get there, because he can barely run us in the Championship. And I think taking him on board, every fan was a bit disappointed with it, because we knew the risk of Scott Parker. And I think if we stick with him, it's going to be the same issue with company, where we stuck by him, and look how that's turned out for us. And I think, as a board, we should really, as if I'm a board member, the board should be considering some other options. I'm not saying definitely jump ship and he should be sacked tomorrow, but for me, I think the board should seriously consider someone else, because I just think there's no one from injuries who will come in and save this. I think there's nothing building from this. And in terms of teams we've played so far this season, other than Leeds and obviously Blackburn, because it's a derby, what is a difficult fixture? Because I wouldn't even class Luton as a difficult fixture, because every team has pretty much lost to Luton. As one against Luton, sorry. So it's a case of I don't know. I'm trying to be more logistical and not get my emotion into it, but I genuinely think that, Scott Parker's not the man. This is a lose-lose situation. If we stay in the Championship, we've not done our job. If we go in the Prem, we know he's going to fail us. Why should we stick with him? And it just seems like a sinking ship. And for me, I just prefer if we took a risk on someone else and go from there. But I also get the point of this is very early days. It's also very harsh to fire a manager such early days. But that's how I feel about it when it comes to Scott Parker.
Yeah, fair enough. Claret and Blue 1882 says the board owes Parker at least a transfer window and then see what happens. Who's looking forward to Burnley games at the minute? Flyover Fred says we should have lost to Blackburn and PNE. Nobody can tell me that Parker is doing well. Sunderland as well. We have played, by the way, who are top of the league.
True. Fair enough. Yeah, I forgot about Sunderland.
Yeah, I think for me, when you're sort of saying, might as well sack him now and bring someone else in, it's obviously a massive risk, and it's just going to cause more disruption as well in the squad and the season. And then we could, some people will argue, and fair enough, if you're of that thinking, that we could end up dropping out of the playoffs if we keep Parker until Christmas. But again, it's probably just as much of a risk, if not more, that will, that the season will fall away even further if we do sack him, because he's got 2 teams out this league already. And who comes in to replace him? I mean, I know that's not a debate that I really want to have right now, because I never stand on that. I know Sam likes to put that point out, but last season when people were always saying company out there, and I'm always like, well, it's who do you bring in? And I've always thought that shouldn't be a reason for not sacking somebody. Sam, your thoughts on the Parker in or out debate, please, mate?
I mean, there's arguments to both sides, I suppose. I mean, there is. I can see people's opinions on the style of play and results and things like that. But I mean, you have to go back to that other argument that you've just said as well, which is, who do you bring in? Like, you're 13 games into a season. There's not a lot of cracking managers out there. And if there is managers out there, it's either because they haven't had a job at the start of the season or they've already been sacked. So it's not really great on resume anyway. And then the other side of it is obviously, like, of course, you don't just take into consideration, what's happened in the summer. But, when Company came in the summer, right at the beginning of the summer, built his own team, built exactly what he wanted. The board went and got him every player that he possibly wanted for that lineup. And lo and behold, 13 games into the season, Burnley finally clicked with a team that Vincent Kompany wanted and played. And then going on to the argument of Scott Parker won't keep us in the Premier League and that side of things, like, okay, I get that. I also have those reservations, but look what Kompany did after getting 101 points. Like, he literally got us relegated having one of the worst Premier League performances of a newly promoted team I've ever seen in my entire existence. We went down with a whimper, and that came from one of the best managers that Burnley had seen in an 18-month spell. The point that I make for Scott Parker is he came into a board who had said, look at this fantastic team that you've got to take over. You've got Wilson Odobert, Koleosho's on the right, and then look who you've got Benito. You've got Manuel Benson, you've got Zaruri, you've got all these fantastic players. Look at your defence. You've got O'Shea. You've got all these brilliant players, and then the entire team just got ripped out from underneath him. He's had to bring in. I mean, let's be honest as well. The board brought in 7 players in the last 6 days for however long it was. They brought in like 7 players. Fleming was, with the greatest of respect, on deadline day, not the number one signing that we wanted to make, because we put 3 bids in for Morgan Whittaker 4 hours before we brought him in. He was the club clearly wanted a marquee signing and went out and got somebody. I'm still pleased with Fleming, but I'm just trying to put all the logistics out there. I don't think you would say that when we came into it in the summer and we got told Scott Parker's our manager, you kind of had reservations, but you looked back at the team and you thought that team is more than capable of getting promoted. If we lose 3 or 4 players, we'll replace those 3 or 4 players. We sold 15, 16 players and brought in 8 players. 2 or 3 of them are equally as good, if not a tiny bit better than some that went. But we lost a whole load of quality players. Going back to that game against Luton, we absolutely dominated Luton, but that team doesn't exist anymore. Those players aren't at the club anymore. Scott Parker is trying to build a team, and I completely understand what you mean about the identity and the way that they're playing. I completely get that, because I can't see the direction in which the club's going and the players are trying to play. But I can't put all that on Scott Parker. There's so many other factors in that if we were to sack a manager now as well, what does that actually do for the squad? Like, we've had Vincent Kompany in the last few months who left to go to Bayern Munich. We brought in a manager to take over a Vincent Kompany squad with Vincent Kompany players. Then all of those players left and get replaced with players that Parker might not have even wanted, or just thrown some players in there for him. In my opinion, you have to give Scott Parker the benefit of the doubt, but also understand that he still needs the time, and regardless of whether or not people can, and I completely appreciate it. I do understand other people's points of view with this, but for me, sacking a manager after 13 games because they're 4th in the table and they're 6 points off second, if we'd have got results in some of those other games, I know it's if buts and maybes, but if we'd have got results in those other games, we're in a totally different position. We've had 2 losses all season. the downside to it is we don't look like an attacking threat. We don't know where the goals are coming from. That's my only issue. That's where I fully understand. But turning around and saying Scott Parker's the main issue and Scott Parker's this and Scott Parker needs to leave, I just think is a really lazy reaction to what's actually happening. There's so many more logistical things that have happened at the club that have led us to this moment. And to turn around and say, oh, the bloke that's been here 13 games or the players that have been here before or the board don't have any part to play in this. Scott Parker needs time and he needs the backing of the Burnley fans, just like Vincent Kompany did when we were drawing with Stoke and playing drab games left, right, and centre, and thinking, where is the win going to come from? And then all of a sudden it clicked, and we didn't lose for ages. We just need to give Parker time, really. The time will tell. If we get to Christmas and we've not picked up many more points, then I'll sit right there with people. But right now, you have to back the man.
Yeah, I mean, I've already put my colours to the mast, but I agree with everything that you just said, Sam. I do think it's too early. I don't buy this thing. I've put the comment on screen from Flyover Fred, and sorry to go at you, Fred. I know you're a regular commenter and listener and stuff, although we always disagree, to be fair. But he says it's got nothing to do with where we are in the league. We don't look like scoring a goal with a side that costs more than the majority of the division put together is mental. While I get the second bit of that and completely agree with that, of course, coming where we are in the league has to come into it. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Yes, it's not been great. I respect that. And people can sit there and say it's a false position all you want, but you can only play what's put in front of you. Yes, at the end of the season, we might not be fourth, we might be sixth, we might be second. Unlikely based on today's evidence, but you never know. Everybody's in a false position then because they've only played a certain amount of teams. We've had good results, we've had bad results. We went to Leeds and won. I do feel like them kind of games suit us more. However, I did think that about Millwall today, and obviously that's been blown out of the water because they came at us. And I remember thinking to myself, Millwall are a side that's not going to sit back like QPR did, like Plymouth did, like Preston did. And we are going to be able to pick them off and break them down. But ultimately, we couldn't because it's not good enough in the final third. Quick shout out to Dan Taylor, who donated 200 stars on Facebook. The comment was on screen for quite a while. It was a very big comment, Dan. So it did cut off Sam and Dan's face. But thank you for that, mate. I really do appreciate the support. So thank you. You can donate stars over on Facebook, or you can do super chats on YouTube if you want. But there's a Millwall fan in the chat. Sorry, Andrew, I will come to you first. I always like to bring in the opposition fans if they're in and not giving it the big one. If they start giving it the big one, you know me, I just get rid. Dave says, hello, guys. As a Millwall fan, I can see the problem with Burnley at the moment. It's not your team. They're a great bunch of players. It's Scott Parker. His style of play, tactics are League One at best. It's weird because Fulham fans, Bournemouth fans all said a similar thing. But I mean, I had reservations like Sam did.
Both teams got promoted under him. This is what
and this is what I mean.
They had money. They had money to spend, though. Both teams had money to spend, and I genuinely don't.
Spent money.
But I don't. But if you're sitting down and you're interviewing managers, they say the board and sat down with Scott Parker. We don't know what's been said, but I can almost guarantee that the Alan Pace or whoever was in that meeting didn't say to Scott Parker, "You can have all this money. We'll let you buy all these players." Granted, he's been shafted. There's no denying that. And I'm not just blaming Scott Parker. We're in this mess because of Alan Pace and the board, 100%. But I just don't think it's a case of Scott Parker's being sold a dream. I just don't. And when we look at Bournemouth, when we look at Fulham, look at the money that he was able to spend in them leagues with him. And if you look at all the fans that talk about him, they don't even say he's that impressive when he came to their championship leagues. They always say the same way. The first few games were amazing, but then they sort of just strolled by, and individual players just got sucked the life out of him and stuff. And we've seen his tenure in the Premier League. I just think the situation with Scott Parker, and I'm not just blaming Scott Parker, is that it is a sinking ship no matter what. If we stay down and we do not get promoted, we have failed what we're meant to do. And if we do get promoted, there's absolutely no way we stay up. There's just no way whatsoever. And I just don't think it's a situation where if we lose Scott Parker, we're just going to go for another Vincent Kompany. I just think, and I'm not just saying tomorrow I'll sack him. It's a case of I want the board to have time to get, considering new managers and stuff. I just don't think we owe it to Scott Parker. Vincent Kompany gave us an insanely impressive championship season, and that's why we're so hesitant to not sack him in the Premier League. But look how it's turned out. You know, why should we hold out on Scott Parker when it's not working? There's no signs of it working. And even though he hasn't been able to pick players, and I can imagine that's very difficult because you have to do different tactical approaches. You need specific tactical based players. You know, we do have good talent in this squad. We've got Roberts, we've got Esteve, we've got Cullen, we've got Collie Osho, we've got even Trafford for this league. There's so many players in our squad that are talented and they're looking absolutely shocking. And I just think that with Scott Parker, we're not going to get anywhere. And I feel like we're going to have this conversation in 6 months' time and look back and think maybe we should have sacked Scott Parker, actually. That's how I see it.
I mean, as Sam said, if we are in this position at Christmas, when I say in this position at Christmas, I don't mean fourth and 3 points off second, which is where we are at the minute or whatever it is. But if we are in this position at Christmas, I sit here and I say it's too early to get rid of Parker, and I stand by that. It's 13 games, we're fourth. I know some people will sit there and say it doesn't matter that we're fourth. It does matter that we're fourth because we want to get out of this league. And yes, some people might say, yeah, well, I'm expecting us to drop out of the playoffs and be a mid-table team. I've seen people say there's no way we're a mid-table team. You might think Scott Parker's a mid-table manager. That's fair enough. But again, his CV would dispute that. But I just don't see how we do it after 13 games and we're fourth. I just don't see. No board would do that. And I've seen people in the comments, not in the comments of the stream, but maybe in the stream. I've missed some. There's been a lot of comments, so thank you for that, everybody. But some people on Twitter saying, I'm expecting him to get sacked tonight or tomorrow. No. Surely you might want it. Surely nobody's actually physically expecting Alan to pull the trigger after 13 games. He will, at the very minimum, get until early January, I think. And if we're fourth in January and we're still playing turgid football and we're picking up, 0-0s and 1-0s and then a defeat, against an average team, no disrespect to some of the Millwall fans in the chat, but Millwall on paper have an average team, then maybe, if we were 12th, maybe not even 12th, like 10th and, looking like not getting the playoffs, maybe that's when Alan does it. But there's no way it's going to happen tonight. There's no way it's going to happen tomorrow. And I think even Dan, even though you are of the company out. Definitely am that. Parker out debate. Then even I would suspect you're not thinking. I had that comment on screen for a while from Suey. That is the main difference for me. Parker had a good striker in his Fulham team with Mitrovic, in his Bournemouth team with Solanke. He had 25 to 30, 20 goal a season strikers, so he could get his team to get in good positions, like we did against Oxford, but drew a blank, like we did against Plymouth, but in fact, no, Plymouth, that's a bad example. I know we scored, but that were only because of a penalty. Like we did against QPR, like we did against Preston, got in these good positions. A decent striker finishes these chances, and that, in my opinion, is the difference between the Parker's Fulham side, the Parker Bournemouth side, and this Burnley side. I just think we are missing that creativity spark that an extra striker does bring you. And I know a striker wouldn't fix it because we are too slow in possession and stuff. Anyway, let's get to Andrew because he's been sitting there patiently waiting while everybody debates their heads off. Apologies, Andrew. Where do you stand on the Parker in or out debate, please, mate? I know I have, like I said, I've watched your fan reaction, but you said since then you've obviously gone to watch the highlights and thought about it. So where do you stand on it?
I'm still Parker in. Like you and Sam have said, at this point where we are in the table, I understand Dan's point, and I do get everyone's point of view. And last season I was a bit more defensive with Company, so I think that's sort of helping my mind that I can understand everyone else's point of view and see where they're coming from. But it's really hard not to compare this season to Company's season, and I keep trying not to do it. But at this point in Company's season, we just been battered 5-2 by Sheffield United. And I think at that point, everyone sort of thought, hang on a minute, we're probably not going to do as well as we did. And then from them, we ended up losing one more game that season and absolutely running away with the league. And I think if we were having this conversation in January and we were sitting 10th in the league, then yeah, fair enough. But we're sitting 4th. All right, it might be a false position. We might not deserve to be where we are, but we are where we are. If the goal for us is to get promoted by the end of the season, and we do it by nicking 1-0 here and there and getting the draws, there's not a question that no fan will be unhappy with that. Yes, the performance is that shocking. Like, we've lost today to Millwall, which, like you said, on paper, no disrespect, like, they are a good team. They're in and around the playoffs at the minute, but on paper, we should be beating them. But we're still fourth in the fucking league. You know, it honestly baffles me that we're having this conversation at this point in the season. If Company hadn't have buggered off to Bayern Munich and we'd still lost all these players in the summer and we were in the position where we are now, would people still have backed him? After last season, how poor we were, if we were in this position with the same players, would people have still backed Company? Like, that's my genuine thing. So if people would, because I honestly believe they would, if people would have backed him then why are we asking for Parker to leave now? Like, you've got to give the man a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. We've got to give him a chance. There's a comment on screen from Brian says, "I'm shocked we're even having this debate at 13 games." Me as well. I didn't want to have it, but after today, the noise was so loud. I think it's my duty to ask. I'm acting like I'm some sort of, 5-star journalist, but you know what I mean. Like, on these debates, if that's what Burnley fans are talking about, I have to talk about this sort of thing on here, in my opinion. I agree. I do think it's too early to be having that debate. Martin Stevenson, who probably the most miserable person that is on Burnley Twitter at the minute. I like you though, Martin. He says we shouldn't be fourth. The fact of the matter is, we are at the minute. We might not be fourth after Thursday. Or having said that, people keep saying to me, like, "Oh, West Brom are going to dismantle us," and they might do. They might beat us. But West Brom haven't been great. They've not won since the 21st of September. So let's not pretend that West Brom are world beaters. There is another Millwall fan in the chat. I've had to ban one because he started giving Billy big bollocks. But I'm happy to leave Millwall fans in the chat when they're not giving Billy big bollocks. He says the Den isn't an easy place to play. Fair enough. And Scott has alluded to that, to be fair, in his post-match conference. He said that the emotion of the game just sort of like got away from the players, and then they couldn't really get a foothold in the game. So like referencing the atmosphere and stuff. So yeah, I do agree with that. But I think last time, did we draw there last time or win 1-0 in the Championship on the Company? So we have been there and done it before. So it is what it is. Anyway, obviously we all know, Sam, I'll come to you first on this. We all know where the issues lie. The issues lie putting the ball in the net. I obviously reference a lot to missing a striker, and I do feel, I know Foster is split in opinion, but I do still feel that Foster in the 9 with Zian in the 10, both of them two today were missing, by the way, will see us hopefully with a bit more creativity, because we'll be able to, we'll have players stretching the play, we'll have Zian feeding him on and stuff like that. Sorry, just banning another dickhead. So we will have hopefully more play. But my issue is, and my comment always is when we have a striker, it will be better. And I know people will sit there and say, but we're not creating anything for the strikers. We don't need a striker. I think we need more creativity in behind the striker, 100%. But what I would like to say is, all right, it's a bad example because it was only the first 30 minutes. But even with Hontonga today, making them runs, it looked like we were stretching play a little bit. And we haven't seen a striker do that because he had someone in behind him. He was making runs and stretching it a little bit. And I feel like if we have a better striker in there, I do still feel Foster is, decent enough for the Championship, with a proper number 10 in behind him and hopefully some wingers that can start putting in some assists, it will start to not click, because I know people don't like that word because it insinuates that I think it's going to be awesome, but no, just be better up front. That's my opinion. I think with Foster there and Zian there, both of who are missing today, it will look a lot better because there'll be runs, there'll be a focal point up front. Whether we're not creating enough of these strikers or not, it's. I still feel like if we actually have one there, we'll do better. But how do you think we fix it, Sam?
I think, to be fair, I have to admit it is tricky because there's for me, I don't think anybody can come off the pitch, especially over the last 6 games, and really say that they were an outstanding member of that team. I think there's, for me, and it's just a personal opinion, and I can't help it. I just think there's question marks not from the defensively, but there's question marks of how the defence get the ball out of there. Because a lot of the time you see, the ball with Trafford, it gets played to Egan Riley, it's played to Roberts, and then it's just hoofed down the line to Koleosho, expecting him to get the ball on the half turns past everybody, and it just doesn't work. He's not the type of player either who you want to receive the ball and start playing it inside, because it seems like every time he plays it inside, he manages to pass it to the other team. You want him to be latching onto a ball and just being able to run straight at a defender. For me, Egan Riley, I'm sorry to say, and I know he's had a couple of good performances recently, but he doesn't fill me with bags and bags and bags of confidence when we're playing out from the back. Connor Roberts has question marks around himself as well. I have no idea what he was playing today. He was playing a completely different game. He might as well have been playing badminton, because I could not honestly tell you one good thing he did today. I thought it was awful. Humphreys, I like him. I think he's a player with a lot of potential. He's not a left back. Don't care what anybody tells you. He is not a left back. I'd rather see Lucas Perez just play a left back.
I do agree with that.
Esteve, again, it was brilliant. I think for me, it's the build-up forward. I think when we move it from the defence to the midfield are so disconnected from the strikers or the attacking players that they have no idea how to get the ball to him. Then when the ball does go to Koleosho, he doesn't really have a focal point to put the ball into the box for. So that's he turns around, he shimmies around, he spins a lot, but tries to take his man on the outside, isn't strong enough to get past him, so he doesn't end up putting a cross in. Jaden Anthony doesn't have the ability to beat his man. I know he's done it a couple of times, but for me, it's that cutting pass again. Like, the only other thing that I'd like to say about it is, have we as Burnley fans got to a point where, because of everything that happened with Company in the Championship last time round, we've just got to a point where we just expect to beat everybody all the time?
I think there's an element of that.
Played under Company, and when Company became the manager, everybody said, if we can be in the playoffs, that'd be fantastic. But we also need to give the manager time, because he needs time to build a squad, and he needs time to be able to, find his footing as a manager and take over a Burnley team who's had the life sucked out of him. For me, I argue that, okay, yeah, we have got a better team this time round, and Parker has still come into a team where, there is a lot of quality there, and you have to admit that. But he's new. Half of the team's new. He's got to build up around this team. We have spent a lot of money, just like we did under Company. At what point do you stop arguing the fact that, he needs to go, and understand that everything still needs to gel together? We haven't played with a striker for about 5 games. We've been playing Fleming as a false 9. I couldn't tell you why, but we have done. I don't think the team's set. I don't think we're in a position where every one of our best players is playing in the exact position that should be. I didn't understand that back four today. The back four aren't playing into the midfield very well. We are almost skipping Josh Cullen and what he's actually been known for playing, which is receiving the ball on the half turn from the defenders and just getting the ball forward. Like, we're just so off it. Like, and there is an argument there for, obviously there is the style of play that Scott Parker plays, and I completely appreciate that. But there's a lot of players on that pitch not performing. I think if it was up to me, I would 100% say the striker situation's one. I'd be arguing that, maybe Cullen needs a couple of games out. Brownhill and Laurent playing in the 6 role, and have Fleming further forward, try that out, see if that works. Because, ideally, you've brought in Fleming as your marquee signing. At least play him in his correct position, play him as he can. But yeah, I think that back four needs to be a set back four. I can't be bothered playing. We had it all last season. We were playing centre halves that looked like centre halves at left back, and it's just play a left back. Like, yeah, I think it's a tricky fix though, to be fair, because we've still got Lyle who's injured, who, regardless of what you think of him, I've been very vocal of what I think of Lyle. I don't think he's an absolutely cracking striker by any stretch of the imagination, but I still think we'd be better with him than Rodriguez or Hatunji. The striker's probably the easy fix, really, isn't it? I mean, if you have a legitimate goal scorer in there, you'd like to think that eventually we can start playing up to it. But I just think the team's been injured in certain areas, and I agree with that. But there's so much disconnect from everywhere that I just don't see it as an easy fix right now. But that's why I'm trying to say, like, I don't put it all on Parker, because we gave Company loads of time to get his team ticking and all that stuff. So I just think we need to give Parker time to see if it works. And if it comes to January and we're still dropping down the table, then I'll happily jump on that bandwagon with people. But yeah, right now I think if we get a striker in, then hopefully it can properly sort it out. But
yeah, I mean, I agree it's not an easy fix, but I do think having an actual striker, as I've already said, playing as a striker would be better than having Fleming playing as, like you said, the false nine. Obviously, he played there because of the injuries. I want to see Fleming in the 10 and ideally Foster in the 9. Obviously, Foster's still injured. For me, against, who is it on Thursday? West Brom, I'd have Fleming in the 10 because obviously he's not injured today. He only couldn't play because he was on loan, currently on loan from Millwall. And then Hontondri in the 9. I know people don't like Hontondre, and I want to get into him in a little bit as an individual and how he played, but his technical ability is clearly, needs working on. Like, he can't receive the ball and touch like an elephant and things like that. But he makes runs, and that's the difference. He's actually a striker, and he makes runs, and he tries to get in a position. If you have Fleming playing behind him and feeding in the ball, and hopefully, like I said earlier, some of the wingers can get into the game a bit more, because Anthony were poor today, Coley Oshaw were poor today, Brownlow, who played in the 10, had another anonymous game. He always seems to, I've stuck up for Brownlow, to be fair, but he always seems to avoid a lot of criticism. But again, he was anonymous today. I'll come to you next, Dan. Obviously, I've mentioned some players there that were poor today. You've got Cullen that Sam's already sort of like spoken about. Brownell, who again I feel was anonymous, and I've stuck up for Brownell, like I've just said, because I do think he's better playing in that 10 role. Whereas sometimes the managers, it's not just Parker, to be fair, Company and Dyche both did it, like to play him in like a defensive mid role, which isn't his role at all. But again, he played in that 10 role today, and he was anonymous. Why do you think all these players are playing so poor? Are you of the thinking that Flyover Fred did put in the chat earlier today that Parker's tactics are just destroying them, or do you think the players have got to take some responsibility as well?
So, of course, I think players have got to take some responsibility. It's not all on Parker. It's down to the board of their decisions of the players that we've let go on the hiring side of things. Obviously, it's the players that go on the pitch and play, and it's down to their efforts and the commitments they put in. But I do genuinely think Cullen, we have seen him before Parker. Even in the Prem, we've seen him and we've been impressed by him. Not the entire time of the Prem, of course, but we've seen one game I can remember is a Chelsea game in the Prem later on in the season, which I was impressed by him with. His championship season with Company, very impressive. But obviously, Cullen is Company's type of player, so it's hard to say. So I think it's a case of with Cullen, he definitely doesn't complement what Scott Parker's looking for. But to be honest, I don't even know what Scott Parker's looking for at the moment. I think Sam was bang on in terms of the disconnect between the midfield and the attacking. I'm not sure what's going on. And I think one of the first issues is when you play players out of position, it's never going to work. I feel like every game you've got at least 3 players that are not playing in their normal, natural position. And I think, and I understand, of course, and I'm not naive to the injuries we have and the situations that are going on. But I think Kaliosho is a great example. Is on the right, he's not his best. He doesn't even look too good on the right. But we continuously play him on the right because I feel like we just favour Anthony on the left, and I'm still not convinced of Anthony. There's just so much work, and it is, of course, tricky. I'm trying not to be naive because, I'm not saying Scott Parker has come into an easy job or anything like that. But I just think, when I think about the start of the season to now, I couldn't name a single player that has improved or has shown glances of becoming a better player under Scott Parker. The only player that I can give even a slight credit to is CJ Egan-Riley, and that's just because we rarely saw him before this season. So it's a case of, I just don't think with the players we have, which are talented players, Scott Parker just doesn't know how to properly manage him. And I think it's not a case of, I'm not looking for attacking, playing, high momentum, high pressure like Company did. It's like I mentioned on a previous stream where we look at Sean Dyche football, and that was some of the best years we've ever had. But when we're talking about this team, this Burnley team that is meant to be competing top of the championship, in the last 5 games, their XG is the worst in the EFL. It's really not a great look. That being said, there's a lot of issues in regards to the board. with Whittaker having 3 bids in, it was obvious that the transfer window wasn't our greatest moment and that we definitely panicked. And I still think Fleming was a panic buy because they knew that the club would get absolutely sticked if they didn't get a player like Fleming in. I don't know what the straight answer is. I think the first one is we need to start playing players in their natural positions. I think that we really need to solve what the issue is between connecting the midfield and our attack. I think Cullen just plays so negatively now in the terms of he really stops momentum building. And like you said, Brownhill, when he plays in the 10, he just goes missing, and it's every time he goes missing. So it's a case of I'd love to see more of a switch around in the attack. Again, it's a case of I know there's injuries and I know there's a lot of issues, but I'm just not convinced. Where to start with it is putting players in their natural positions. Yeah, I don't really know what to say more than that without getting like angry or anything. So
fair enough.
I'll leave it as that.
I've put a comment up from Alan on the screen. Alan WH, as he's called on Facebook, accused us all of being on the Burnley FC accused me of being on the Burnley FC payroll on Facebook simply because I don't want to sack a manager after 13 games. Alan, I am not desperate to defend Parker. I've sat here myself and said, if you've been listening, if we are in this position at Christmas, well, not this position, 4th and 3 points off top 2, because that's not as bad as what people are making out. I'm just trying to look at it with a little bit of sort of like logical eyes. Yes, the play isn't great, Alan. I respect that, but let's just remember where we are. We're 4th in the table. You can sit there and throw adjectives out and say it's a false position and things like that as much as you want. But the fact of the matter is, we are 4th in the table. We've only lost twice all season, and one of them, okay, today was poor. I admit that. It was easily the worst performance of the season, but one of them was against top of the table, and we've been to Leeds and won. I just don't want to sack a manager after 13 games, Alan. That is my thing at the end. If we were 18th, that'd be completely different, and I get it. But we're 4th. We're 4th in the table, 3 points off the top 2. So can we just have, some sense, and can everybody stop throwing about ridiculous accusations and name calling? There's not been too much of that in this chat, by the way. But someone called me a donkey on Instagram and things like that, and people tell me they were unsubscribing last week just because I had a different opinion. You're a grown-up, Alan. Act like one, please.
Do you know what it is, right? The thing that really throws me off about it, and I'm not trying to, diminish how other people view how the situation they're in. I completely get that. But we are 4th in the division, right? And my issue is, what is the expectation? What was the expectation with Company, with the team that Company had? What was the expectation? What was the expectation when Odebear started the game at Luton and we had all these fantastic players playing in that first championship game? Scott Parker came in as a manager, used that team. We absolutely dominated. What was the expectation after that? Was the expectation we're going to go on and roll the league and get 100 points plus again? Because if it was, fair enough. That was under Scott Parker. He was the manager at the time with that team. Then that team got pulled away from him. Did the expectation change, or did the expectation stay the same? If your expectation stayed the same, then you have absolutely no understanding of how football can change in the blink of an eye. The team got decimated in the space of 2 weeks with the same manager that started the first 2 games scoring 9 goals, with a team that was easily going to finish top of the championship. Easily. You had Odebear in the team. You had Cullen, Brownhill, Perez, all these brilliant players that are still here now. They're still here now, but then you had all these other fantastic players. You had O'Shea starting at centre-half, and who... That was my only argument for CJ Gimrali. I know he's improved better, but would you still rather have Dara O'Shea there? Because if you don't, then I don't know what you're watching, but you would still rather have Dara O'Shea there. You would still rather have other players that came, and the players that came off of the bench. I mean, we had Wout Weghorst coming off of the bench, like everybody. You had Weghorst coming off of the bench. Like my argument is, at what point does your expectation change? If your expectation from the start of the season with Company, where he's not going to Bayern Munich, it's fine. This is Company's team. He's come down, and then we lost him and we brought in Parker, and then we had those 2 games. If your expectation has stayed exactly the same, then I just don't understand it. We have to have to understand that there's been such a huge change in the team, and your expectation has to change. We are not going to go and get 100 points again, lose 3 games all season, and dominate teams every single week. That was a false fallacy of what Burnley were ever meant to do. We've never seen that type of football. We saw it for 18 months. We aren't that team. We've never been that team that's going to go into look at the seasons under Dyche. We still dominated the league, but we didn't get 100 points. We didn't win every game. We didn't beat teams 4-0 every single week. You know, you have to understand that there's a lot of different variables that go into football, and I completely appreciate the style of play side of it, because I'm also completely on that side of how people are thinking. I completely understand it. Like, the style of play isn't great, and there isn't a clear sign of progression. I get that. I do completely understand that, but your expectations have to change based on the situation that's come before you. In my opinion, anyway.
Sorry, can I say so? I don't want to take everyone's airtime or anything. I just want to say, first of all, obviously we differ on these opinions, and if people are putting in the comments just saying, you know, slandering people like one of us, stop being daft. It's just football, is what I want to say first and foremost. The second thing I want to say is that I don't want to just compare it to it's either Scott Parker or Company, and comparing Company's performance. You know, when Scott Parker came in, I knew it was going to be completely different to how Company played his football. The issue I have with Scott Parker is that even with Company, when we had him and it was the 1-1 draws and he was doing my absolute heading, I saw something coming together. Even early then, I saw there was clicks coming together. There was certain elements coming together. I just think watching Scott Parker, we have gotten worse, and there's nothing's gelling. If anything, it's getting worse in terms of our chemistry as a team, and that's where my concerns come from. Where, you know, and I can definitely understand that. Obviously, I genuinely think that the board and Scott Parker would have had talks about there will be financial restraints. I don't think Scott Parker expected the absolute clear out he had, and the board have absolutely done him dirty. There's no denying that. But I just think with the past few games that we've had, the past 5, 6, 7, it has been a case of the way we have played has been shocking. If it was a case of these games that we've played and you could see something coming together, but it's just not properly clicked there, and we are getting these results, I'd be happy. I would be happy, because then you can see something come together. I'm seeing absolutely nothing. And when it comes to us being 4th in the Championship, you're also completely correct. We're 4th in the Championship. That's how it is. But then if you look at the tenure of players we've played, the teams that we've come up against, we've talked about these 5 or 6 or 7 games that we've just played, and we talked about how we can only afford 1 loss in them row of games. And we're looking at it, and it's been draws, win all there, but lucky wins like Plymouth, for example. My main issue with Scott Parker is that, you know, it's not the fact of we're not getting results, and it's not the fact of you know, we're 4th and we should be 2nd and we should be 1st, and it's not the fact of we should be scoring 5, 6, 7 goals. My main issue is that if I look 5 games ago to compare to now, we are completely worse off. There's not a single player that has improved under Scott Parker yet. And when I look at his history, although great Championship history, when I look at his history as a whole, I just think that obviously don't want him to be sacked tomorrow. It'd be daft. We'd have to prepare for a new manager to come in. I just think if we wait and we stick with this manager, what if it becomes a situation where it's too late? We can't make automatics, and we don't make playoffs, for example. That's my main issue when it comes to Scott Parker. I do want to say, I don't want to take all the airtime, so I do apologise. And everyone, if any people are making stupid comments to any of these that for their football opinions, stop being daft. It's just football. But yeah, I just wanted to add that little part on.
Yeah, no worries. There was a comment that said I look like I've aged 5 years watching Scott Parker. That's the most disgusting thing anyone's ever said to me. So thank you for that, Murphy Brown, if that's your real name. Probably isn't. Alan, who's accused me of being on the payroll, says, Joe, you look sick of this. We are all here, guys. Put my teeth back in. We are all here because you guys are excellent at what you do, but this is the first time Burnley have been in this kind of situation for a long time. Is it though, Alan? Because we looked not great under. Yeah, last season was shite, mate, for a start. But I weren't even thinking about that. I forget about that. The last season was worse, yeah. But Yeah, for me, like the first 12, 13 games under Company were just as bad. But obviously, I do agree with Dan on the fact that with Company, you could see progression. Do I think today was the worst performance of the season? Yes, I do. Do I think it's getting worse each week? No, I don't. I disagree with that. I don't think it's getting worse each week. Somebody gave me stick last week for agreeing with Scott Parker because he said it was the best performance of the season, probably not including the Sunderland, not the Sunderland, the Luton and Cardiff games. And I agreed with that because we had decent patterns of play once again up until the final third. So that's why it was okay last week. And last week, for example, was better than Hull. So it's not been getting worse every week, in my opinion. But today was 100% the worst performance of the season. So I can see why people are saying that because they're just basing it on that last game. I mean, you may think it's been getting worse individually each game. That's fair enough. I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong. It's just my opinion. Andrew, there's obviously, again, you've been pretty quiet for a while, mate. Andrew always waits very patiently. And
I'll get a word in, mate. Fucking hell.
Even people in comments are getting in more than you at the minute, mate. But I know I've alluded to injuries and stuff, and people don't like it when I do that because it's taking a bit of blame away from Parker, and I think some people are trying to go angry at Parker sort of thing. But let's not go into Trezor because I'm sick of that fucking bastard now at the minute. Constantly saying that the club are saying, "Oh, he's nearly there," and then just nowhere to be fucking seen. He obviously doesn't want to play for us. And if he does play for us again, it'll be on the last 5 days of December before he makes his move. But obviously Zian not there today. Foster not there today. Redmond. Cousin Nathan, could he do a job? I think he could. Ramsey, probably not going to be for a while, to be fair, Ramsey. But again, Ramsey improves his team massively. But Foster and Zian, they improve us, don't they, mate? Do you think?
I think Zian definitely does. I feel harsh because I know we're probably going to go on about him in a bit, but I feel harsh on Atonji because today...
Go on then. Let's focus on Hotonja then. We'll move the debate on because again I think the injury thing's probably a bit irrelevant.
We get to finish that bit
because I want to change. I want to change that. I'm bringing Andrew back. I want to change the sort of like the response and the comments in the comments. How do you feel Hotonja played today, mate? And sort of how do you feel he is, in our squad? Like what sort of role do you think he has in our squad over the course of the season?
Before today, I thought he were a donkey, and I thought he were a lad who'd won a Make-A-Wish competition to play for Burnley, and I feel awful for saying that now because the first 15 minutes, I thought he looks like a right good player, and he'll do all right for us, and then he just got no service. I think I've got the same ones. He just got no service, and I think with him up front, with Fleming behind him, I'd like to see that because I'm sort of getting to the point with Foster where, and I feel bad saying this because obviously he's had all his mental health issues, he's had his injuries, but I feel like he needs dropping because the only other options we've got are Hotonji and J-Rod. So Foster knows that as soon as he's fit, he is our number one striker. Like, we all know that he is our number one striker, and I feel like him being dropped will give him the kick up the arse that he needs. But yeah, I feel bad on Hotonji because today when we made the subs, we looked more attacking and we were getting the ball into those positions. All right, we were shite when we did, but we were getting the ball into those positions. And for the other 45, 50 minutes or whatever, he wasn't getting the service. The first 10 minutes where he was getting the service, he created 2 chances. One, he took a shot where he probably shouldn't have done, and the other one zipped just past the post. He could have had more of an impact today, and I feel like when he does have a decent player behind him creating the chances for him, I think he'll be all right.
Yeah, no, I got a bit of stick again, shock, this week when I said I'd play Hotonja in the 9 instead of Jay. And some people saying things like, "Oh, you know, he's awful." Like, kind of what you just said, mate. There, mate. You know, he looks like a Make-A-Wish sort of like kid who's won a competition, sort of thing. But the reason why I said it, and I think he showed it a little bit today in the first 20, 25 minutes, is a proper number 9. He'll make the runs in behind and stretch the Millwall defence. And when we were not on the front foot, because we're never really on the front foot, but when we weren't being pegged back by Millwall and we were getting the ball up front, he was making them runs. There was that bit that you've already alluded to where he touched it round the defender and then shot when he shouldn't have done. But that was a good little passage of play until the shot. I think there was a pass on to the left, to be fair, which he should have done. But he was making them runs. I don't think Jay would have made them runs. I think he's like sort of like too old now. He's more of a sort of like header sort of player and a drop deep sort of player. But we don't need that at the minute. So on Thursday for me against West Brom, yes, Hontondre in the 9, Fleming in the 10, and have somebody behind him feeding in them passes, and so then he can make the runs, he can stretch the play. But then again, some people sort of like saying like it's because sometimes when the ball gets passed to him, he's clearly not got the technical ability to bring, you know, like a pinged pass down or something like that. I think people see that and they just get blinded by that and think, oh, he's not good enough. But it's not always about that. If he's making them runs and then creating the space in behind for your Flemings and your Brownhills and, you know, your Lucas and your Antonys, when the wingers finally start showing up, then that can help as well. Whether he can receive the ball being pinged at him or not. But yeah, Jay's a club legend, as people are saying in the comments. But yeah, he did nothing when he came on. I mean, I know people say, well, Hontondre didn't do anything, but he did. He made some decent runs, and I know you need more than that from a striker. But it was more than what Jay did. But Dan, I'll come to you next on this one. Hontondre, how do you feel he played?
Yeah, I mean, compared to the games we have seen of him previously, although previously I believe we played him sort of out of position. I'm kind of on the same page as you, where I'd like to see him play as a 9 against West Brom, and we play Fleming at a 10 and see how that works, because I feel like, you know, he does suit a 9, and we've already talked on previous streams about how Fleming does suit that 10 role perfectly, and it'd be good to see if the chemistry works between them two in that respect. It's hard to say because every player was shocking today. And there's no denying that. I think we've just got to give him a couple of more matches, give him time, which I know is a bit hypocritical because Scott Parker's had only a few games and I'm telling him he needs to be gone. But I do genuinely think with Tonje, he just needs a couple of games before we can suss him out, because like people have mentioned, you know, well, one Lyle Foster, he gets injured, you know, he gets injured a lot. I'm not fully convinced of Lyle Foster at the moment. The games that I have seen of him haven't been great. I also think, sorry, I've just been distracted because I think, Joe, your camera's glitched by your phone.
Yeah, you can still, it's the same as every time I do this. I sometimes think to myself, I'll be fine. But I was just saying thank you to Lee because he sent some stars, but I don't see it on StreamYard. But when people do send donations on YouTube, it comes up on StreamYard, but on Facebook I don't. So I will just say thank you. And unfortunately, it's frozen now on my face. But as long as you can all hear me, that should be fine. If I maybe have to turn my camera off and come back on, that might help. But yeah, sorry, mate.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I just think he needs a couple more games, really. I think, you know, I'm not too convinced of Lyle Foster from what I've seen. And as someone has already mentioned, you know, J-Rod is a club legend, but he's probably past it now. I'm curious if we decide to recall Obafemi in January. Not to say that Obafemi will be the answers to our prayers and that he's this phenomenal striker or anything like that, but it just gives us another option. But that's if we do call back Obafemi. I highly doubt it. But yeah, I'd like to see him as a 9 and Fleming as a 10 on when we go against West Brom, which I think is on Thursday. And it's hard to judge him on this game. I think he was in a more natural position, but as I've said, everyone was crap today, so it's hard to kind of point him out as so he was the only bad one today, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, just checking you can still hear me.
Still hear you. Camera's off.
Don't allow the camera's gone fully black now. Yeah, last time we did this, I had fireworks behind me. The thing is, it's only ever crashed when I do the fireworks thing. For some reason today it's crashed when I do the thumbs up thing as well, so I'm not particularly sure why. Yeah, Andrew's not frozen. He just doesn't move for a while because he don't get a chance to speak, says Murphy Brown. But I'm not frozen. But yeah, I mean, Sam, I'll come to you. Hontondre, your thoughts on how we played today, and kind of like more importantly, how he does fit into the team going forward.
I think for me, with Hatonji, I think in an ideal world we play Foster because he is the better of the two. But I think what you saw today from Hatonji, which you don't see necessarily with Zion, is you see a striker who has the ability to hold the ball up and do what a striker is there to do, which is sometimes they are there to have the back to goal and be able to hold the ball and play it left and right. Sometimes they are there to get that flick and turn and shoot. Like Andrew said, I mean, that whistle past the post, granted, it was a scuff shot. And if it would have gone in, the keeper would have been absolutely devastated with it. But, you know, it's a chance that only a striker really can make. You know, you wouldn't expect Brownhill to be getting ball on half turn and hitting it like that. Like the runs in behind, the runs into the channel is what you want from a striker. You want somebody who's going to be able to get the ball and hold the ball up. So, like I say, I don't particularly think Hatonji is the answer, but I definitely think it's much better than having Fleming play in a position that he's not normally there to play. Like I say, I mean, in fairness, I think in an attacking sense, I saw a comment earlier and it summed it up perfectly. Is I'd rather see Sarmiento on the right and Koleosho on the left. Like as good as Jayden Anthony has been, and I do think he has been good, I just don't think he affects every game. I don't think he affects every game. I think he's in some games and not in other games. And like, for example, in that whole game, he took the game by the scruff of the neck because we were playing so high up. He wasn't getting the ball at the halfway line, having to run at players. He was getting the ball, you know, near the corner flag and having to beat a player. That's where Jayden Anthony's good. Jayden Anthony is not the type of player that you want travelling 20, 30 yards with the ball because he just isn't going to beat his man. He doesn't have the pace to get past the man. Whereas if you had Sarmiento and Koleosho, both of them have that burst of pace.
Gives you more balance, doesn't it?
Yeah, and plus as well, Sarmiento will shoot. Sarmiento will just have a go, and that's what you want. What we kind of want to see now is just, will somebody just have a shot at goal? Can you try and test the goalkeeper? Will you stop trying to get the ball to Koleosho and flick left and right, and then play it to the edge of the box, and then play it into the channel, then play it across the box and walk it into the back of the net? That's not how any team plays football. The way that they scored today was play the ball 3 times in and around the box, cross the ball, score an header. That's how they scored, because they put the ball in a dangerous area and just had a go at it. Like, that's how a lot of teams are scoring goals against us. That's how a lot of teams are getting joy against us. That's why we're not getting joy, because we do not shoot. If we had Sarmiento on the right and Koleosho on the left, it gives you such an outlet, especially if you have Fleming behind as well, and you play a Hatonji in the 9 in the next game. You can then say that if that doesn't work, I will hold my hands up and say, if that doesn't work, or when you've got Foster in there, that it is Scott Parker and it just isn't working whatsoever. Do I think he'll make that tactical change? No, I absolutely don't think he will, because I think Jayden Anthony is like his best pal, and Jayden Anthony goes to Scott Parker's house and gives him foot massages at the end of the game. Like 100%, they are like best pals out there. Like, he is not dropping him at all. But if that for me would be the going back to the previous question about half an hour ago, that would be the change for me that I think we should do. I think we should have Sarmiento on the right, who's a lot more direct, Koleosho on the left, where we know he's dominant, have a proper number 9, and have the marquee signing playing his position behind him. For me, Hatonji didn't do too much wrong today. I just don't think I just think he's a bit out of his depth personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for West Brom on Thursday, it's got to be Hatonji in the 9, the marquee signing, as you call him, Zian Fleming in the 10, and then you've got to be putting Luca on the left, where he's more effective, rather than putting him on the right for Anthony, who, like you said, just can't beat a man. Yes, he gets an assist every now and then, and obviously got the goal against Sheffield Wednesday after a dismal mistake by the defence, the first one. I have just had a notification off my laptop to say my battery will be going soon. So we will start wrapping it up. But before we do, and it's normally a very easy discussion, this, especially when we've done well, but obviously it's going to be a tough one today. Man of the match shouts, please. And give your reasoning but please not too much because I'm now down to 8%. But seeing as you just slapped your face in frustration, Dan, we'll go
You've got to go first now.
You do this every time. I need to.
No, show
I'm going to turn my
emotion, mate.
camera off.
I'll come for you.
Oh God. I don't even know where to start. I'd give it to the referee, but he was crap as well. Let's go. You know what? I'm going to go with Estev. I just think I'm not impressed with anyone, but I just think week in, week out, Estev, he's been pretty solid, and I think we see glimpses of it again today. I think if we do end up going up, he'll be one that stays and will be crucial. This is probably one of the most difficult ones. I weren't happy with any of the plays today, and I don't really want to slag too many plays off. But for me, let's just go with Estev. He was as solid as he could be, and that's probably where I'll go. Yeah.
Fair enough. Sam, your man of the match, please, mate.
Before I say it, I just want to caveat it with I'm so sorry for the hipster response, but I'm genuinely going to go the travelling fans because that was absolutely awful. That was horrendous to go and watch, and there's not a single player on that pitch that can come away with the head held up high at all. I couldn't give you one. Like even though people are saying CJ Gunriley again. Is it the argument that CJ Gunriley was the best player on the pitch, or is it an argument that everybody else was that bad that CJ Gunriley was the only person who didn't
I think it is the latter.
Accuracy. Like, that's my only argument. So for me, it's them fans because what an awful day out that must have been.
Yeah, I mean, I worked 12 hours yesterday. I'm working not to get my small violin on. Yeah, not to get my violin out, but I worked 12 hours yesterday. I got 12-hour shifts for the next 3 days. So I thought, on my only day off, I don't want to go to Millwall. And I was buzzing with that result. So Esteve is the man of the match from Dan. The travelling fans, says Hipster Sam. Andrew, who are you going for?
Don't start that. Sorry, don't start it. I said it, you can't.
Nipping that in the bud straight away.
I'm going to be hipster as well, but not go with the same person. I don't like doing this because I think your man of the match should be someone who's played the whole game, but the only player who really impressed me today was Hannibal when he came on. Not because he did anything amazing, but there's just one moment from the game two moments where he ran to keep the ball in play in the corner flag, and then there was a moment near the end where I think he'd given the ball away himself, ran to get it again by our own corner flag, and then brought it back to the halfway line. And that was the most exciting thing that any of our players did today. So I'm giving it Hannibal.
Fair enough. I agree with the majority of the people in the chat. A lot of people have gone for CJ Gunriley. I'm going to go for that. I do agree with Sam. It's probably more a case of he was average, whereas pretty much everyone else was awful. I don't think Esteve was awful, but he wasn't as good as he usually is, and I think that's probably why a lot of people haven't given it Esteve. I thought he lost a few headers in the air today. Although I haven't seen the stat for that. I'm sure someone will tell me in a few days that he won 95% of his headers or something like that. But yeah, we will wrap it up there. A big shout out to Andrew. A big shout out to Sam. A big shout out to Dan for all of you coming on the show. You know I always appreciate it, lads. Thank you so much. A massive thank you to everybody in the comments, apart from the 2 or 3 Millwall fans that were giving it the big one. And even you, Alan. Shout out to you, Alan. I'm not on the payroll though, mate. Just to get that one out there. Now, I wish I was, but I'm not. But yeah, thank you to everyone watching. Thank you everyone for listening. Obviously, if you've joined the stream late, like some of you have, then obviously when I press end stream, then it does stay on for you to watch back at your leisure whenever you want. And I will be putting this up as a podcast like I usually do. So it will be there ready for the morning when you go on your commute to work. Or, as I've already said, when I go on to my, where's the comment gone now? For my 12-hour shifts, 3 days in a row. I can't remember. Someone put, get the violin out, wow, wow, wow. I thought that was a bit of a dickhead comment. There it is, Murphy Brown again. He called me old earlier, now he's taking piss again. There's been a few comments recently that I'm not happy about, but no, I'm only messing there. So, but yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody for listening. Massive shout out to the 3 that have come on the show. Always do appreciate it. There won't be a full-time show after West Brom. just difficult on a night match to get it done and stuff like that. But we definitely will have one after the Swansea game. It might have to be 8 p.m. on Sunday again, with it being on a Sunday. But we'll see. I'll chat to the lads and see what the best time is for everyone else. Pre-game show, hopefully get one in before West Brom. Definitely get a Swansea one in. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening. And we will see you next time.
Goodbye.